All right, that's George Bush. That's the Skull and Bone Society. And I guess I can see this. But Bill Clinton, though, he was not a member of the Skull and Bone Society.
No, I believe, is Bill Clinton a member of the Council on Foreign Relations?
Oh, yes, he certainly is. He's CFR.
Yeah, is George Bush a member of the Council on Foreign Relations?
Yeah, of course.
Bill Clinton wasn't laying naked in a coffin trying to get born again.
No. But we go back to an election, 1980. We had Jimmy Carter from the Trilateral Commission.
That's right.
We had George Bush from the Trilateral Commission, and John Anderson from the Trilateral Commission is the independent ticket. So it wouldn't make any difference which way the coin flipped. Heads, they win, tails, we lose.
The Rockefellers have never lost an election in the last 60 years.
Well, no, we lose even if the coin landed on its side. They had all bases covered.
Aren't you, you know, when you mentioned the Trilateral Commission and you mentioned Rockefellers, I've heard many fringe groups, ranging from the fundamentalists to the neo-Nazis or whatever, taking bits and pieces of this and constructing it into their own agenda. Aren't you worried about being misinterpreted?
They all have their own
Everybody
spin.
has their own spin on it, right? Their own agenda. But what we're talking about is things that can be proven from accepted reference works, and how you use that information to promote your own philosophies, your own agenda is that's their problem.
And there is, you're saying that there is proof that from May the 1st, 1776, that the organization, the Illuminati, began.
Oh, you can look that up.
And to the end of this very day, the Illuminati is still around pulling strings.
All you need
the
to do
cover of their document is the left-hand side, a reverse seal of the dollar bill. And it was put on there early on, but it was the reverse seal early on. But it wasn't until the corn cob mystic, Vice President not George Wallace, but Henry Wallace,
Henry C. Wallace,
who talked to Roosevelt and said, hey, this thing has got to go on there. Now, he had in the White House a little shrine for Madame Blavatsky. Blavatsky wrote
ISIS Unveiled and the Secret Doctrine.
But she had a manifesto going. She also had a publication of a book. Well, I've seen the books. It's the combined works of Lucifer.
Yeah.
She had Lucifer magazine, and I've held those copies of Lucifer in my hand, leather bound. She was the publisher and co-editor with Annie Besant, and from this Lucifer organization came Theosophy, and from Theosophy came Unity, came what is
yes,
this one world religion philosophy. And if you go to the United Nations, they've got a meditation room, and you'll find out that the Baha'i religion is the only one that is accepted in the United Nations. In the mediation room, you're going to find the little Illuminati pyramid. So it's loaded with symbology, and Jordan Maxwell is the expert on it.
And what I was going to say, too, is that the United Nations uses a particular publishing firm for all of their documents and books and materials, and it's called Lucius Publishing. The United Nations used Lucius Publishing. Lucius Publishing was at one time Helena Blavatsky's Lucifer Publishing. So today, the whole
funded by the Lucifer Trust.
The Lucifer Trust, United Nations. That's why it's in New York, because New York is referred to as the Empire State, because it's the new state of the new empire that is coming. That's why Steven Spielberg and George Lucas with their Indiana Jones and the Empire Strikes Back, it has to do with occultism, it has to do with numerology, it has to do with a lot of mysticism coming out of theosophy. The point being is that we are involved in some very powerful occult manipulation of the world by some very astute occultists, and we are not even beginning to be aware of how far gone we are.
It's crazy to have a united world government. I don't want to do away with our individuality. Some people are white, some people are black, tall, short, fat, thin, Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, Jews. I like the diversity. I don't want to see a world with 220 nations. I want to see a world with maybe 3,000 nations. I believe in the right to integrate, to segregate, to separate, to have linguistic, tribal nation-states emerge where there are these people, like in Africa, and I lived there for a while, where the Metabeles have been fighting the Mashonas. Let them have their own nation states. Let that division take place. Let there be a free world alliance. Let there be a Croatia. Let there be a Serbia. Let all individuals separate and find a place that is comfortable. Let them do their own thing in their own time, in their own way. If somebody wants to be a racist, let them be a racist. Let them have a racist state. Let Israel exist. It's a religious state. It has a racist philosophy, fine. But let there be a Palestine. Let there be an independent Gaza. I would like to see the secession of Alaska. I worked there on Radio Free America for 3.5 years. I called for the independence of Alaska. It should be an independent nation.
Well, you know, when you're mentioning all this conspiracy stuff, you know, I'm thinking that, you know, when various things happen, like when the riots happened about 6 months ago.
April 29th and May 1st.
Right, but when it happened, and when just about everything bad in our society that's happened, not just the riots, I mean, it's almost tempting to want to believe that there are people behind there pulling the strings and all that, because it creates the false sense of security that if we can just stop these people, we can have a better life, and that sort of thing.
But we can have a better life if we stop these people.
You don't think it's just
There's
a bunch of incompetent people just making mistakes, and that maybe you're just reading things and things?
How could everything happen just accidentally? I mean, everything goes wrong, and it just happens to go wrong every time, everywhere, and we've been getting worse off and worse off and worse off. Ronald Reagan and George Bush, who are supposed to be conservatives, quote, conservatives, tripled the national debt. I mean, all of the debt that was acquired from George Washington through Jimmy Carter, they tripled the national debt, and then reporters get out there and say, hey, I'm thinking that these guys are conservative. They're not conservative.
But can't you just write it up to a bad economic plan instead of saying that there are people behind it?
It's by design.
Let me explain something to you.
The bad economic
you do
plan.
not get to be president of the United States, and you do not have hundreds of advisors, highly educated, proficient advisors in every field of activity of human endeavor, getting C2 reports every day from the CIA. You're getting USIA, DIA documentation every hour on the hour for the economy of the world, all things happening in the earth being directed to the president's table. You don't make mistakes when you have become president. You have the finest minds in the world working for you, the finest intellects that the Western world can produce. That's why in a dog-eat-dog world, our country is the most powerful economic society on earth, because we are a very powerfully intellectual society. We don't make mistakes.
Well, Roosevelt put it this way: in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, it was planned that way.
Right.
So they planned on George Bush and Dan Quayle.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about
yeah.
it.
George Bush and Dan Quayle are some of our most intelligent people working.
No, hell, no, they're not our most intelligent people, but they are
fronts.
conspiratorial.
They're
I
fronts.
mean, when you get somebody from the Skull and Bones and the Trilateral Commission, and a guy who says, everything I am today I owe to David Rockefeller, founder of the Trilateral Commission. Why is it that we don't talk about this organization? If they were members of the Nazi Party, if they were members of the Boy Scouts, or some drag queen over in West Hollywood, we would be talking about them. They would be front page headlines. But the Trilateral Commission, 78, 90 people, who controls all three candidates for the President of the United States in 1980?
We like to say in this country that we have the ability as Americans to elect. But the problem is we do not have the ability to select. We can only elect, which means that we can only vote for those candidates which are put before us by our masters, our hidden masters behind the scenes. And when you understand that the Democratic and the Republican Party are financed, and believe me, in this world, money is the bottom line, if you have it or if you don't. And the Democratic and the Republican Party are financed and organized and directed by the same banking families. The same people who finance your banks are the same people who finance your institutions of government. As a matter of fact, the word for bench in relation to a judge sitting on the bench comes from banco, which is in Latin, meaning the bank. the judge sits on the bench, which is a Latin word for the bank. He officiates for the system. So when you go into a court, you're sitting before a court of order, which is actually being financed by government.
How
So
many
what